Everybody, this is one of the greatest people I've ever met in my life, and I genuinely mean that. In the top 25 people I ever met in my life that are the greatest, this man is in it. This is an important podcast for the Productive Conversations podcast, and I love this dude dearly. This guy is the man. He helped make my college life, and I have nothing but respect and admiration. Christopher Daley's on the Productive Conversations podcast. What's up, my friend? How are you?
Thanks a lot for having me, Matt. I'm doing great. Great to see your face. A lot better now. How have you been?
Definitely. I've been, just trying to stay safe, try to overcome obstacles, and trying to grow the show for the greatest audience around. And I'm so excited to introduce them to you, or I should say, you to them.
Great.
Oh man. Yeah. What's up?
Behind you. I'm trying to ascertain all the different movies you got. I see that maybe Django up there. I know you have what's your favorite one from up there?
So yes, as we start with The Wall. Basically the idea coming into this was just being surrounded everything that inspires me. And I only have this, as I do this spin too. I have lots of things featured from sports, movies, TV, politics, tech. And I would say from my favorite thing in this wall, I would have to say this Jimmy Stewart picture. And the reason why is because I understand as we get older, generations keep moving. You don't know the legacy of Jimmy Stewart, one of the greatest actors, true American hero, fought in World War II and Korea. He was the biggest Hollywood star who really enhanced comedy and drama, and he just had an American legacy. So understanding that and appreciating that and bringing it on all my of all people surrounded me to remember what I'm going for, I think that's just really unique. Don't really have a picture, a Jimmy Stewart picture above the cast of Atlanta, the cat with Marvelous Miss Maisel and Django, and I think that just really describes me the best is featuring that.
It's eclectic in a beautiful way, in the sense it's an homage to the old and the very new and what's happening now. It's a nice picture there.
Yes, and thank you, by the way. And what's also great is just having all this stuff with me is the fact that I watched a lot of movies over quarantine, still am. I try to watch a movie a day. And, watching old Jimmy Stewart movies, and I understand maybe some younger people might simply not watch it because it's in black and white, but yet if they just give the patience for it, they'd be really entertained by this guy. They would this guy's movies, they would have a lot of fun with it. And yeah, that's what helps bring about this, because he can, through many decades, entertain so many different audiences. And I do believe even for those youngins who watch those movies, his movies, they'll still have a profound effect. I mean, a lot of people watch It's a Wonderful Life during Christmas time, and that inspiring movie, Rear Window, if you'll get at those Hitchcockians and Vertigos. It's just I think he just, I really want to have an impact, a legacy like Jimmy Stewart. And that's why I have him right behind me. So
so you say you watch a movie a day. What's the last one you watched?
The last movie I saw was the last one I saw. Wow. I say that, but I haven't watched one in a week, but I can tell you really quick, because I have a log on this app called Letterboxd, which I highly suggest, where it's just a movie review.
Just suggested that, and I was gonna get that, because I've been trying to keep track of things, because the amount of times at work when I'm trying to describe a movie I just watched, and I can't accurately describe it, nor can I give the actual title, and it's always just almost like an SNL sketch, right? Like, oh yeah, it's got actors in it, certainly, and they're doing.
That's hilarious, actually. And yeah, it's just the social media. It's like LinkedIn for movies, and you got to write reviews in your own special way. And I got you. The last four I watched. The very last one I saw was the movie I Love You, Man. You've seen that with Paul Rudd and Jason Segel. just
Mhm.
about a guy trying to get his best man. Feel good, very funny. I watched this movie called Half Nelson with very young Ryan Gosling from 2006. It was a Sundance film, and it's about him being a high school teacher in an inner city Brooklyn, and he's a drug addict and trying to overcome addiction with these young kids he's trying to mentor as well, and one in particular. And that was incredible. I got that off Hoopla, and he actually got an Oscar nomination for Best Actor that year in 2007, and that just shows how long of a great of a career he's had. So Half Nelson was great. Then I watched First Blood. Sylvester Stallone, the very first one. Now I know the First Blood, the Rambo, the Rambo film series got really a parody of itself in action thrillers and stuff in the 80s. But the very first one, it's also a movie about treating Vietnam veterans at the time, how the mistreatment of Vietnam veterans, I should say, nature preservation, and being amongst man versus nature, since that's where it's set up. So those were the last three, and I also watched Spirited Away, which was my last four. If you've seen that, the anime classic,
Just
English
watched
dub.
Spirit 2 nights ago. It's pretty good.
Did you really? What'd you think of it?
I I watched within a couple of days Spirited Away, and what was the other one? There was another from the same studio. Oh, Kiki's Delivery Service, it was called.
Yes.
And I forget the name of the studio, but they have a very similar aesthetic, and it's very yeah, that's the best way to describe it, in the sense that if you're looking for something that's very aesthetically pleasing,
Oh,
I found it
absolutely.
to be. I'm not normally into that medium in general, but it was incredibly moving in a sense that even if you didn't follow the plot as much, just it had a large array of various smaller subplots that
Hmm.
came to light throughout. Beautifully done. And I went into it incredibly pessimistic. Like, I'm not going to like this in the slide. No, I guess that was a good introduction to the world of anime.
Isn't it? And by the way, the studio you referred to, Studio Ghibli. If I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but Ghibli. And yeah, dude, it was just an awesome that talk about nature, that preserving nature. It was that film, and just an incredible, inspiring story. It was a lot of fun. You know, another one movie I did watch recently, and that can transition to our next point. I watched the movie Chris, and I'd be surprised if you haven't seen it, but if you haven't, you gotta watch it. You particularly would love it. Is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington? The Jimmy Stewart. You ever see that?
Classic. I mean, and the amount of parodies within, whether it be The Simpsons, Family Guy, Hill did a bit on it. Like, it's, yeah, I think it's one of the most, if not the most parodied thing. I mean,
Yeah,
it's so iconic. Yeah, love it, love it. I
absolutely.
remember as a kid thinking like, it'll be cool to see the Capitol one day.
Literally, and transition into that, and believe, Chris, you live in the Washington D.C. area, correct? Or you actually live in D.C. too?
I do. I live in Washington D.C. I live close to downtown. I live in a neighborhood called Bloomingdale,
Oh my.
um, and I love it. Been living here for about a year and a half now. Lived first in Cleveland Park in the northwest of DC. Now we're a little more northeast and a little more central, so closer to my office, which is nice.
How about that? So tell me your initial thoughts, Chris. I know you enjoy American politics, someone who's very pleasing to talk to in politics and has a great view on things. And now you go to the greatest American city for it and the greatest place for it, the Mecca of politics, Washington, D.C. Tell me what it was like to first. Well, tell me first how you got to D.C., what brought you there, and tell me about your first initial days and what it was like to be in this happy place of yours almost.
Yeah, certainly. So I started working for a group called Vera. It's a carbon standard group, and they work in carbon offsets and um, different environmental development projects. And I work there now as a program officer in a forestry sense. And I came here about a year and a half ago, and my first impressions of the city were I absolutely blown away at how much it changes neighborhood per neighborhood. And I know that
Mm,
seems like it's a cliche where you hear somebody talk about New York City, for example, where it's just like, yeah, yes, well, obviously going from one borough to the other and even neighborhood to the next is quite different, but very stark changes. And it's interesting because the imagery that you have of Washington, D.C., of the nation's capital, is just a skyline strewn with monuments to dead people and classical architecture. And no, I mean, DC is a beautiful, vibrant city with an incredibly rich and diverse culture. Um, I, it's interesting. One big takeaway from all of this is I don't like neoclassical architecture anymore. I don't like columns. I don't like the gaudy marble, the fake marble. I don't like those steps. It's everywhere and it's abrasive. I it's I've garnered a new appreciation for Hartford, for example, right? So,
Look
some
at
of the
that.
beautiful, the Goodwin building downtown and in the Travelers building, even, and some of the older uh, buildings closer to the University of Hartford, like on
Mhm.
Prospect Avenue, for example.
Right.
Um, you obviously, I absolutely adore it here, and it's become a home, which I'm happy to say, and very
That's really good. Good
is a
point.
noble thing to say, that to find home in a place that you weren't born in. Um, but no, I have a greater appreciation now for Connecticut, for example. Want a yearning to go back, and not just to see friends and family, but the landscape, to go to New England, such a beautiful area.
Living in DC, as you mentioned, so many historic buildings, so many historic landmarks. Do you feel the history while you're there? Do you feel the presence of all these legacies coming together for our country? And that is where everybody goes, whether even if you're a senator or you're in the House of Representatives, everyone goes there from this entire country you live in. Do you feel that history and that presence almost?
Yeah, you certainly do. And DC does a wonderful job in the DC. I think it's the Historical Society, in tandem with the National Park Service, does a great job in
Mhm.
exploring different aspects of history that aren't, here's the White House and here's the Washington Monument. It's here is different neighborhood leaders and individuals, writers, poets, artists, different scientists, and what have you, who are a part of the American lexicon, lived here, studied here, and worked here. So
Yeah.
it's a
Huh?
greater, more holistic, what is Washington, D.C.? Yes, obviously it's named after one individual. Yes, obviously everyone knows that all the top of the Washington Monument stopped for a while during the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln did X, Y, and Z. But no, it is it is really special to see the very unique history, which is Washington, D.C.
Look
So
at
it's
that.
to feel that it's something that you also have to be cognizant of, that it's a different history for different people, and it's something that is also marred with triumph and pain, where to
Mhm.
see it, to stand on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, Dr. King stood there, and to the Million Man March ended there,
Yeah.
some of the grandeur that happened there, you get awestruck in it. But then at the same time, you remember just across that reflecting pool into the Capitol building, you had some such egregious acts of, whether it be Strom Thurmond arguing for segregation, whether it be the stealing of Native American lands, etc. So it's a city of beautiful parallels of rights trying to right wrongs and wrongs trying to overdo the right. So it's the historic presence while you're here is something hard to ignore and hard to get away from.
Definitely, man. I feel that. And, with people who go there with various opinions and how various ways of people want to see things running either locally or nationally, it's still, even despite all that, it must still be cool to have that place at least could come together one way or the other. And if you don't mind me saying, one thing about DC, we know what happened in the first week of the 2021. We know what happened with people, a lot of mainly Trump supporters that barged in and stormed the Capitol. And politics aside, for one thing, for this, I just like to ask, what was it like in the vibe of the city? Again, you know, the motivation to do it absolutely disgusting and wrong. But for yourself and the safety in your city, what was it like that day, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, certainly. So I live on S Street, which is just off of North Capitol Avenue. So I walk a block down and I could see into the rotunda. I could see into the Capitol, quite close to it. The general vibe was frustration in anger, but not shock and awe. And I'll explain that. In that I was in so were a great many of people in Washington D.C. out for racial justice protests earlier this summer. Yep. And the videos and pictures that I have and that were just absolutely filled every newspaper across the world and every television screen and phone screen across the world over, or people being subjugated to tear gas, to police brutality, to helicopters overhead, et cetera, et cetera. The level of police, where I lived in Cleveland Park in the northwest of DC, was a staging area for the ATF, which is the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Division in the DEA, because they called upon every person with a firearm, I suppose, in the federal jurisdiction to quote unquote protect the Capitol, right? So absolute fear, Black Hawks going over at all times. Wow. And to just see the day before everything that happened at the Capitol, not much, right? A couple of people, they said they're going to have the National Guard there. They said they're going to do this. They said they're going to have that. And to hear about all the FBI threats and hear about all the intel that said something seriously bad's going to happen, right? And they found, for God's sakes, they found bombs in different headquarters. They found bombs in the National Lawn. So
disgusting.
And so it's just obvious. It's a large portion of this nation feels this every day, that there are a different set of laws for folks who look like me versus folks who don't benefit from these type of things. It's people of color in this country, different marginalized groups. You read account after account and you listen to interview after interview of, no, this wasn't overly surprising that bunch of predominantly, or if not entirely, white men stormed a building with little to no resistance and proudly put their feet up on the Speaker of the House's desk. For shame. So it's that, right. And it's just
for shame.
It was a strange renewal of patriotism almost, right? And it was this resounding, well, when we were marching in the things that we believe in espouse to our friends and neighbors and family, that the causes that we fight for helped our fellow man, right? It helped our fellow American, no matter.
Brought a good presence to it too.
And so that's what we were doing, fighting for each other. But what we saw in January was fighting for folks that only look like them and themselves only. A very selfish act. And it was something that was wholly un-American. I mean, my God, if we're going to talk about sacred places, sacred buildings, and you're going to cry over what? A burned down Target? You're going to get all worked up over a broken into CVS? Come on now. I know it's the double standards that came out. So yeah, that was the general attitude here. It was just frustration, but not surprised. Business as usual, huh?
No, yeah, I commend you on explaining that in a very mature manner. And it was just disgusting and heartbreaking to see those double standards be brought up and people thinking, I think it's pretty obvious to understand the human fight for it, take the politics aside, when we should treat everyone, every background in a fair, equal manner, which we could get. I believe we still have a long way to get there. I understand that long way is generations away, but at least if we could start making people uncomfortable, finally bringing up these changes, electing the diverse leaders to make these changes of where these people come from, to make these changes, that we could not give any credit to those scumbags who stormed the Capitol, not going to make them heroes whatsoever, not going to acknowledge them. What they did was wrong. They didn't bring the right point. And you know what? I think you're helping motivate us to get stronger, to fight against these people who fight for a specific selfish reasons. And it's time just to fight for every common person, whether he, she, or they.
Mhm. That's that's a good sentiment, whether he, she, or they. I mean, we're going to talk about this quote unquote melting pot, right? We're going to talk about, well, this grand American experiment, and we don't really act like it. And then when we try to add, not try to add, but when we try to accept and really live up to our credences, right? That's when they really start to push back and show their true colors, and or lack thereof. So yeah, it is. And you know, I went down to the Capitol yesterday. Just it was in that area. It's still fenced off. It's still. I wanted to go to the Supreme Court the other day. Just it's a beautiful area, nice sitting area to think and read. But no, it's disheartening to see. You know, this is supposed to be such a public, beautiful place, and the worst thing about it is just like, well, whatever. I could just walk home and I could be back here when this is done in 20 minutes. But it's to see folks in different license plates and to see folks in rental cars with different languages and accents and what have you. So they came from far and wide. They saved up all to see these things, right?
Yeah.
I think of myself watching Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I think of what an amazing trip and how lucky I was that my father took me to the White House and took me to the mall when I was a kid. And what, you can't see it now because what, some redneck went and put his feet on the desk of something. Come on now. I understand why they're doing it. There's credible threats to the security of a lot of folks there, especially you know, lest we forget they went in with what were the things called, zip ties, so they had ulterior motives. But it's a very shameful display.
Oh yeah, man. DC is. I've only been to DC a few times. I loved it every time, always in passing when I was going to my grandma to North Carolina, and I really want. I was planning for spring 2021 to just go for a weekend, and we obviously know what happened. And I'm just dreaming, hopefully that day too, because I mean, you can attest spring, especially in DC. It's the beautiful trees and
Yeah,
just
the
those
Cherry
little
Blossom
yards.
Festival is absolutely gorgeous. It
And I
was
could visit you too, so now even more
yeah,
of
and you know,
a
I'll take you. You could stay here, and we could walk to the waterfront, and we could see. Yeah, it would be great. Last Cherry Blossom. It's interesting because the most iconic is by the Jefferson Memorial.
Yep.
But all across the city, especially at the National Cathedral, beautiful botanical gardens and just these little hidden away nature preserves, conservancies rather, front lawns even just all across the city. So would love the opportunity to take you around and see that. That would be so cool. We're so close,
take
aren't
you
we?
up on that.
We're so close to seeing this thing through.
That's what is exciting with me. With everything that I've seen, that even though we obviously had the worst start of a year possible, but we do have a new administration. We've just got to get through I mean, first of all, just get through this pandemic. But with this, I believe I'm excited for a new era to begin. I understand the road to recovery is going to be a long one, a very long one that will require patience and maturity. But at least we're getting in the right direction, I believe, at least, and holding faith for it. And hopefully I can do whatever I can to help improve this country one way or the other.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I mean, right now we're already seeing a lot of business as usual practices. Since Joe Biden has taken office, over 20,000 individuals as of yesterday, according to a report from the ACLU, have been deported. So if we look at very just glimmering hopes of stopping deportations in a pandemic, in not just a pandemic, but turning a blind eye to humanitarian crises just across the world over, to keep up ICE's disgusting raids on the border in different border towns, so that's what still keeps me up, right? And as far as racial justice and things and the like, yes, we are moving in a positive direction, especially if you're looking at a lot of the his different cabinet picks and things and the like. But there's still so much work to be done. And as far as fervor and just this sentiment to want to organize and win and keep this momentum going. It's so important that come the midterms and all these local elections across the country, that the left starts to realize, I think it's already realized, sorry, not to invalidate political ideology, but it's more often than not that we get very jazzed about presidential runs, large, important congressional and senatorial runs, right? But a lot of the smaller elections, Democrats,
important of them all.
Yeah, Democratic, statistically speaking, Democrats don't go out and vote nearly as much as Republicans do. So the momentum has to carry through.
Yes, and I agree with you. And as long as you're cautiously optimistic, which is the perfect way, I think, then the most fair way to go about it, at least there's light at the end of the tunnel, even if it's small, but at least we're going towards it. Another way to transition to things. Just one last thing on DC, Chris. Besides the immense historic perspective being in that great city, I'm just curious, what are just some of the other hangout spots that we haven't mentioned? Like, where do you like to go to eat in DC? Where do you like to go? I mean, you definitely have the great places to run, but like, just what are just some fun things, especially in a pre-COVID world, but definitely a post-COVID world, are you excited to do as a kid in his well, not a kid, as a young adult in his mid-20s? Like, what else is there to do in DC that like you can do in any other city?
Yeah, so what's super, I think, unique and exciting about Washington D.C. is similar to New York City in a sense, and I think everything under the sun is pale in comparison to New York, but relatively speaking, culinarily speaking, there's such a diverse array of individuals here, especially an international array. We have every single one of our embassies, several international nonprofits and organizations based out of the nation's capital, which makes for an amazing culinary scene. Whether it be, is also not just, whether it be different nations' food or a type of food, but it can be very niche. Like, for example, Detroit pizza is something that is really blowing up here.
I've heard of that place. I think I've heard of that.
New Haven style pizza, my favorite under the sun, is you could find, there's 2 or 3 places that specifically have New Haven pizza and I went a couple of days ago to this place called Pete's, and their menu is all Connecticut and New York themed things. You could take, like, the Metro North is, you know what I'm saying? It's like a meatball one, and like it's neat. I would highly suggest it, and it tastes very similar to, I mean, it is like the classic New Haven coal fired crispy crust, similar to like a Sally's or Pepe's.
All right.
I'm not sure if you're a pizza guy.
I do like my pizza. I've only been to Pepe's. I've never been to Sally's before. So, no shame on me. Maybe maybe if I can lure someone, or not lure, if I could invite someone in, I have to try that. I can't fairly compare the two, but Pepe's is incredible.
Yeah, so it's the different array of food here, as well as there's really what became super trendy here, it seemed, and they're all over the city now, are different beer gardens, like these different pop-up beer, and they're all outside, and they're all very reminiscent of what you'd see in like Bavaria and or the Black Forest, so like Southern German open air, like the long table and the large steins and huge pretzels and everything. It's a really fun time and a great way to, and a lot of them are on rooftops, or we have spectacular views of the whole city. So to have a stein of beer and look out into the Capitol, the White House, and all that good stuff it's pretty cool. And it gets pretty in DC, so nice to be outside.
What is your go-to beer when you go to the beer garden, Chris, if you're able to pick?
I really like, that's a good question. It's always, there's this one place called Dacha Beer Garden, and that they have, I really like Pilsner style beers. I like Hefeweizens. I like wheat, more creamy type beers.
Me too.
As far as like German and other that style, there's one that came out of Munich, I believe, in southern Germany, called a Radler. And Radler, I believe, in German is cyclist, or has something to do with riding a bicycle. So folks who are cycling in the summer stop at Beer Garden, and have something very similar, reminiscent to a shandy. It's a very lemonade-esque type of beer. If you've ever had Sam Adams
Yeah.
Sports Rocker, that's what that is. So it's really cool to see some of those. How about yourself?
If I had my go-to beers, I do like those German style beers, the Blue Moons and the Shock Tops, but probably my favorite beer in this world is Blue Point. I think, yeah, it's Blue Point, and it's like very similar to those more weedy, Tizzling type of beer. I believe so. But those are just incredible. I also like me some IPAs, like the hipster, but it's just cool in this beer revolution to see all the various small companies and breweries come pop up and have people enjoy responsibly, you know?
Yeah, it's I cut down a little bit on my beer consumption to watch the beer belly there, but it's I at the onset of the pandemic, once my rent was up, I actually did do a jaunt out west for a bit and lived in an Airbnb in El Paso. And
Oh, can we talk about that? What was it like?
El Paso was amazing. So my girlfriend and I left DC and stayed in El Paso for a month, then stayed in an Airbnb in Tucson. And then my friend Gary and I went to Page, Arizona on the Utah border. And so throughout the time there, I went to a lot of national parks and a lot of national monuments and state parks. And it was a great COVID-friendly, social distancing friendly endeavor to go to these places. And already, to camp out in a wilderness area and not see another human being for a full 48 hours was pretty cool and pretty, again, kind of the definition of social distancing to the extreme. So that was really cool. But the tie into beer there was in El Paso, got real accustomed to having a lot of different different Mexican style lagers from different small to medium sized breweries throughout Mexico. So that was really cool to try different Mexican beers, as well as a lot of Guatemalan and Salvadorian different variants of that, and different appreciation for how you could manipulate hops and barley and water. It's really interesting.
Oh, yes. I love a great Mexican cuisine. Talk about things that they do with both their food and
that's
drinks.
the as far as like, if we're going to talk about categorically a power ranking of food types, Mexican and all things Mexican, I think would be at the top of my list. How about you?
Oh, that's a great subject right here for
there's whole podcasts and whole careers dedicated to this, so we could
yeah, so if I had to go with like specific ethnic foods, I mean, I really love Italian food, man, and it's just so easy to make. It's so soothing. I can never get tired of pasta. I like to call it macaroni, but I can never get tired of pasta. I really can't. Even if you talk about beer bellies, just pasta bellies, all those carbs, but it's just such an Achilles heel. I won't lie.
I've been thinking about getting a pasta maker. It's speaking of aesthetically pleasing things to watch, somebody making pasta,
Yeah,
it out and mixing it. And I don't know. I got to do more research into what does it taste that much different. Have you ever made pasta yourself?
I never made pasta. I've made raviolis and manigots and your like stuffed shells and stuff, but not really. I've never actually literally made pasta. I've always wondered that too, if it's better or not.
Yeah, I would love to just put the TV in the kitchen, turn on the Sopranos, and slowly make a sauce, and slowly make or Goodfellas, and slowly make. I'm thinking of like the scene from Goodfellas. You've seen Goodfellas, obviously.
Of course, there's a picture on it right here.
When they're in the prison and he's shaving the garlic very thin. Is that Goodfellas? Or is that
Yeah, that's Goodfellas.
Yeah, I would love to.
What's his name? Paul Sorvino.
I bet that sauce tastes pretty good too.
Oh, dude, I like making my own sauce. Well, like I actually made some yesterday, but it's just it's so simple. But I just pour 2 jars, put some water, like a cup of water, put some Italian seasoning and parsley and pepper, and just stir it. It was just that easy. But like those who genuinely make it with the tomatoes and all that patience and all that stuff, it's incredible. But yeah, nothing beats a good sauce. It makes everything. It's like some people up here like to call it gravy, but You're making
What's
me.
what's your go-to if you're talking about like within this to make the tie into cinema here?
Mhm.
Um, what is your go-to like mob movie?
my the go my go-to mob movie. A great question, man. I have to go with The Departed, even though it's more Irish mob in Boston, but that's my absolute favorite movie. I mean, Goodfellas is almost it's one of the few what I call perfectly structured films in terms
Okay.
of acting, directing, the music, the story, uh, comedy and drama blending perfectly. Some people consider Goodfellas a black comedy, really, if you really think about it. Uh, it's like the cinematography as well. I'd have to go with those two, but probably number one has to be the Departed. What's your favorite mob movie?
Um, I'd say Goodfellas. I mean, Goodfellas is just the narrate. I think it led the way. I mean, I could be wrong, and I'm just trying to think of the timeline of from Goodfellas to other movies afterwards. And again, if we're going to talk about parodied things,
Mhm.
um, Goodfellas is up there just with that narration style and with the and a lot of the one-liners. You know, you think I'm
Oh,
like what,
so quotable as well. Great
very
point.
yeah,
Just shows
uh,
the good writing in it.
and a lot of the cast of The Sopranos um, made their debuts there. I'm not. You
That's
ever
right.
watched what's her name?
Lorraine
The
Bracco.
therapist.
Yeah, Lorraine
Um,
Bracco.
yeah.
My aunt
Um,
looks just like her.
I that's a series I've been contemplating. It's one of those things that every time I'm at a lull for it, I want to start something new, another series.
Oh,
I
Chris,
all
you
and I
have to do that. Well, you have to give
always The
Sopranos a
Sopranos.
chance. You haven't
Oh
seen it
no, no,
yet?
I've seen it. I've
Oh
seen
yeah.
it time and time again. It's in my opinion, the greatest show of all time. And
No doubt.
I would go hard for that.
Like that's again just perfectly blending all emotions in a TV show and just incredible. Did you like the ending of The Sopranos?
I did. I don't want to spoil it for any listeners.
We can
But
spoil it here.
I
Spoiler alert. If you watch.
spoiler alert,
Yeah.
pause, spoiler alert, pause. I
Yeah.
think
Just fast forward a few minutes if you haven't seen it yet.
it was beautifully done in the sense that a theme that Tony brings up several times throughout the show, and something that's not just brought up by breached by Tony, but in general, is why the Cosa Nostra, why organized crime became a how it came to be in the Italian American experience in New
Mhm.
Jersey and in New York. And they talk about the virtues of protection. They talk about the virtues of family and things like that, and sticking together for common good, right? And they one thing they always Artie Bucco mentions several times over when he's talking
Mhm.
about something. Well, how does he describe almost every single pasta food? Oh, it's real peasant food. It's real that. So there's a lot of harping on this was a downtrodden ill-gotten and not I think the most important not financially stable group of people that they needed to form groups like this for
Yeah.
protection. And I think Tony's sick of it. And I think the last scene, spoiler alert, still here, with him walking into how American was that? The song that was playing was
Don't stop believing.
Don't Stop Believing, to get onion rings in a bowl and a
Mhm.
salad that is in every Italian American restaurant in the United States. That massive chunks of iceberg lettuce that's kind of old, red onions and peppers strewn about. You know, waiting there, daughter comes in late. How American is that? And it's one of those things that you don't. They're not eating anything remotely what Artie Bucco would make, right?
Nope.
And they're a very financially stable place. Everyone's smiling, laughing. So to me, that was it. That was it. You don't. They didn't need the story of why the Sopranos, the Buccos, the Gandolfis, all the other people within the Sopranos joined organized crime. The reason ceased to exist, so the show ceased to exist. That's why I think it just stopped right then and there. But they did it beautifully in the sense that, well, here's the reason why. Here's the catalyst for that.
Oh yes, and you know what's funny? If you notice, every productive conversation podcast starts with a pop culture reference intro, and I put that. So the CD sums up perfectly. If you've seen season 5, the season 5 finale, when he confronts Johnny Sack before Johnny Sack gets arrested, and he says the quote, We're here to put food on the tables of. We're here to put food on the tables for our family and put a roof over our heads. That's it. At the end of the day, that's why the mafia, as you mentioned, was created, just to get by in this American life. And then he gets arrested, and then Johnny Sack gets arrested, and that starts the final season in 2 parts.
Yeah, and the intentionality behind a lot of the rhetoric, especially Meadow, where they had her and Tony her and Tony, I think it was season 3, had an indiscretion about Tony's just an open racist, bigot, terrible individual that within beautiful screenwriting, you here and there feel bad for.
The anti-hero.
It's really the living, breathing thing. Well, not anymore, but
it's rest in peace, James Gandolfini.
Yeah, amazing man. But no, and her bringing up constantly that crime is more of an indicator of poverty and class than obviously race is no indicator whatsoever, that you are pushed to do certain things because of class struggles and structures. Where I think that was so beautifully woven in from her experiences working where she goes in Colombia, working at different law centers, and the advocacy that she displayed throughout. Obviously, this is my plug because I had the biggest crush on Meadow growing up.
Easily.
I think but all that rhetoric builds into, there's no need for the Sopranos. There's no need for, what was their family called? Did they have a name for their family?
The Sopranos.
Not the Sopranos. No. You know how like there was the Johnny Sack.
Oh, I think it was the Lupertazzi crime family as a whole.
Yeah. There it is.
Yeah.
Whose name was that? Is that from his uncle? Is that Junior's like real name or something?
Lupertazzi. That was I know the Soprano crew was named after not named after. I could pull it up really quick. The Lupertazzi family was the New York family pretty much. And then the Soprano family was also named after the crime family is D Cavalcanti family. I'm definitely botching it. But it says right here on the wiki for Sopranos that this operates the 5 families opposite the river. Wait, this is the actual family it's based off of, that's hilarious, actually. Sorry, the Mio crime family is what the Sopranos, the D Cavalente family is what the actual New Jersey crime family that Sopranos is based after. But according to this, it pretty much was formed. It was named after, Johnny Soprano and Corrado Soprano, which was Junior. Johnny Soprano's is that, and let's try to sum this up. But it's named DeMio, I guess, because this guy, Ercola DeMio, is believed to have the first official boss, and that's who recruited everyone together. But how about that?
Yeah, I'm excited for the I forget the name of it.
Many Saints in Newark, and you're gonna see it on HBO Max. Thanks to their exclusive streaming, you don't have to see it in theaters; it'll be right away.
Yeah, I mean, to me,
we have to do a review podcast on that. We have to.
I would love to. HBO is the hub for them. HBO is my favorite streaming service. But
September 24th is when it comes out.
September 24th.
Yes, and you were about to ask another question. I didn't hear that.
No, I guess I'll have to just rewatch the whole series again.
I'll get ready for September 24th, and we will definitely do a review podcast of that. And like you said, just Sopranos is everything you want in the show. Compelling characters, tragedy, so many hilarious moments, so quotable. And you know what my favorite quote from that is? With Paulie Walnuts, that character. He just Christopher asked him, "Don't you think you live life and nothing? Aren't you afraid that nothing ever good ever happens?" He's like, "Yeah, and nothing ever did. So what?"
It's interesting to see where a lot of them went afterwards. Like, did the actor who played Paulie Walnuts do anything afterwards? I know, like,
he did a few episodes of Family Guy.
Yeah, he was in very like awkward cameos in Family Guy with his just making food in the kitchen.
I mean, not really. Like I mean, they all have good, great careers just for this show alone. But all the money you could just ride it. But yeah, I know like the other do like smaller independent movies like Jamie Lynn Sigler and I think her last name is Dykstra now. I will listen to I have been listening to podcasts with the son Robert Iyer, who
Mhm.
played Sony's son, Tony Jr. He just became a professional poker player and just stopped acting.
What?
Michael Imperioli did a lot of stuff. Like Californication, he did a recurring role and a bunch of other
The
smaller movies. I think Steve
Junior
Sharippa was the one who really strived ever since he played Bobby Bacala.
is it? Yeah. So Bobby, that's Junior's like sort of henchman, right?
Yep.
He has his own line of sauce, I believe.
Yes, that's right. It
Yeah.
was Eric Audrey promoting. He got
That's
pissed off.
how. That's the only way I know that is from that Eric. Love Eric Andre.
What was your favorite episode of that? Oh wait, one fun fact. I don't know if you know this. I think you probably know this. James Gandolfini, that wasn't his real voice. That was an accent. He
Oh
sounds
yeah, no. It's strange to hear him in interviews
yeah,
because
right.
he does it so flawlessly.
I'm just like, man, honestly, one of the best to ever do it. Have you seen other movies, whether it's like True Romance or the movie with him and Julie Louis Dreyfus? He just was so talented. I would love to see him on stage too. They said that's where it was at.
Hmm. Were you saying my favorite episode of Sopranos or Eric Andre's show?
Yeah, I'll take both of you quick, but mainly I was asking for Sopranos.
Uh, God, when they go to Italy is pretty good. I don't know actually. I mean I don't like the character of Paulie Walnuts whatsoever. I love to see him fail. Uh, so that was great to see him in Sicily using like Google Translate version of Italian to say
Yeah,
hi
and
there.
he was like, I want some macaroni and gravy.
Yeah, that was I like that level of cringe. I really liked honestly, this could be I think it's the set season 2 opening. First episode of season
Oh
2.
yeah.
It starts off with Frank Sinatra's It Was a Very Good Year.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows every one of the Sopranos family members doing their own perspective thing. And I think that was just a beautiful touch. How about yourself?
That is a really great one. I definitely like the Pine Barrens episode, Stuck in the Woods, Chris and Paulie. Um, it's just really it's though it's so tragic. Does the writing, the second to last episode, the Blue Comet, where
Mhm.
they decide to declare war and the New York bosses and the Jersey bosses but it was just so good on a tragic level and good and we're just moving together and it's I just like it on a writing perspective and then honestly really like the finale and I think it's good and it tied things together well. I think it's the second best. Breaking Bad's the best finale, but I'll have to go with those and I also like probably my absolute other favorite is when Pussy dies and he
Mhm.
turns and sleeping with the fishes and just all the amazing, absolute amazing foreshadowing to show that point. Those are some of my highlights.
I think the Pine Barrens one is I think that's if you look at list of greatest TV episodes of all time, regardless of television show, it's always up there. It's always
Yeah.
like in the top 10 best written and directed. That was with wasn't like a KGB agent or he's like some sort of crazy the guy they were following, right?
Yeah, like he owed him money and that was a way to, make him talk or, get rid of him.
Mhm.
And he was like, it was just freezing out. I mean, I don't know what's in DC. Do you have snow on the ground? We got it. We had another snowstorm
Oh
today
yeah.
as we're recording. It just looks like today.
Mhm.
And the KGB agent's like, I wash my balls in this type of weather. This is hot. And then
Mhm.
he runs away, gets shot in the head, but he keeps moving. We never know what happened.
Yeah, is the writing in that is spectacular.
And you want to know this random scene. Not a lot of people talk about. I think it's great. It's when Chris and he talks to his sponsor in AA, played by Tim Daly, good actor. And then it's the only time I think the word actually mafia is used. And
Mhm.
he just really calls him out on his bullshit. He just simply says, Chris, you're in the mafia. And then he dies. So I think but I think it just shows like it was a boiling point. Like that was late in the series, and that just shows the point of what's going on.
The number of different subplots that Christopher Moltisanti gets into, it has to be the most numerous. In that,
Yeah.
you think of that one. You think of when he was seeing, when he was trying to become a writer, and then there's plots within that, like he was having an affair with one of the writers or something like that. Remember, they're in New York, and
Yeah.
he would tell these highly fabricated stories, getting pizza, and that the yeah, I I think he's the most multifaceted character.
Yeah, and it's just he was just trying to make his place, and it's sad what we know what happened to him, and Tony kills him after the accident, and it's just those last 4 episodes are like just so tragic, but just perfect way to end a series. And this is what it results: you either die or you go to jail. That's sadly happens. And
What's the most disappointing ending to a series for you?
Dexter, luckily they're remaking it again, or they're adding another final season, but I think it was just didn't make sense, awkward, and wow, talk about momentum killer. So I'd have to go with that. How I Met Your Mother one is I thought it'd be more profound, and it was just meh. Those are the ones that come to mind. If the My Name is Earl, which ends on a cliffhanger, which will never end, that's probably the worst. So
That was mine. That was mine without a doubt.
such an underrated show, isn't it? That show was just so funny.
I think it's on. I was going through
Hulu.
It's on Hulu. Okay.
Yeah, I binged it in the fall. I rewatched it in the fall.
It was such a blast of nostalgia when I just picked a show to do that, and that was that's a great show. I like shows. What style is that? Just sitcom with narration? Is there a certain word for that? Like the narration style in that?
I have a website that perfectly subs it up, but yeah, you would just consider it. Could just narrative sitcom. That's all it says here. So I think it was good. That's one of the rare, like I think sick narration is strong hit or miss because if you tell the audience everything, don't allow that show and tell factor. But this is perfect for it, and it explains everything. So
this Malcolm in the Middle.
Yeah. Like I said, use narration for good. They like those are shows that do it for good, and it just shows how incredible TV is, man. Yo, Chris, so gonna have to wrap it up soon. I know you have to get to the airport. That's what's the famous airport over there?
I am bringing a neighbor, not to Reagan, but I'm bringing a neighbor to Dulles, which is in Dulles, Virginia.
Oh, okay.
DC has 3 regional airports. You got the one in Baltimore, one in DC, and one in DC is super nice. There's a metro station in it, so it could not be any more convenient. But the one in Dulles is nice because it has its own lane on the highway.
How about that, man? Well, before you go there, if I could just have just a few more minutes of your time.
Yeah.
I would love you to answer the Prows Questionnaire, Chris, which is I don't know if you're familiar with it from Inside the Actor Studio, but I end every show with this, and it's just 10 short but deep and profound questions, and I'm really excited for your answers for it. So, Chris, let's answer your Proust Questionnaire. My first question is, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word. All right. I like the word all right because it's based on the way you're saying it. It could mean so many things, and the tone that you're saying it could be all right or all right. All right. Think about it. It's one of those things that within, I mean, you and I took a oddly named course on acting.
RVW. Yeah, we did take the plays through 9/11, man. That's where we met. That's where it started it all.
And if I recall correctly, that was actually something that our professor breached with us and he used all right as an example and how multifaceted. So
talk about nostalgia. That's a great one, Chris. Oh man, you and me, we had a few classes. The RPWs. Oh man, definitely have to get into that with the on our next podcast. And I remember in the honors one we took, you just did you were just so savage with that professor we had. Oh man, he was
He was
tricky.
he was a different breed. He was a different,
He really was
very
built
different
different.
teaching style. Leave it at that.
If you don't mind me bringing this up, but I remember once it was just a nice day. You were just enjoying the nice day. So you skipped class, but you told him that you were just being honest. And he was like, you know what? That was okay what you did.
Yeah, no, it was one of those things that it was such, I forget what it was where, no, I was very honest. It was a dreary few days beforehand.
Yeah.
And I was, I needed some space, needed some time, needed some air. And it was a finally nice day out, needed to clear my head. And I said, yeah, I don't actually have a legitimate reason for not going to your class. And then he was very open in that, mental health and taking a deep breath and taking a step away from your workload, education, workload, what have you, is a very legitimate reason. So
I
lead with
love
that. Start with that.
I love that story, Chris, so much, man.
It's a good amount of humanity. It doesn't take a lot to show humanity to whether it be a subordinate, student, etc.
Absolutely, man. That's why I just love that honesty, and I think he did the right thing. That was very courteous of him to do. So shouts to people like him. I can't remember his name, but back to our Prows Questionnaire. What is your least favorite word?
My least favorite word. Sure. I suppose that these are two very similar words in that sure it irks me.
Sure.
Like people say they don't like the word moist because it just brings to mind some unpleasant thoughts, and people have different words where it sounds like it's nails on a chalkboard, but sure just annoys me to no end.
Dude, especially there's a big difference between sure when you text sure either with a period or nothing, then sure or with an exclamation point.
Yeah.
Oh man. My third question for you, Chris, on the Prows Questionnaire is what turns you on in this world? And this is more of a life question. Some people think it's a sex question, but no, it's more of a life question. Like what turns you on in this world? Whether laughter or nature or food, Sopranos.
Turns me on. Nature, but I'm trying to pin it down. It's nature that you were sure that it's in perpetuity. So what I mean by that is going to a national park, for example, or going to a state park and seeing that this land is enshrined in perpetuity to be exactly that, to be just a park, not developed, not what have you. And that because it is in perpetuity like that forever, that I went to Zion National Park recently, and I love their logo on their new logo is, I think, is 1905 to forever. That's like their instead of like a gravestone.
That's a great marketing plan.
And so a lot of national parks are doing that. The date that they were do that, and it's a guarantee for that, and that means access for all individuals. That means sound ecological practices, sound environmental forest practices, etc. So
safe home for wildlife as well.
Yeah, so I'd say what turns me on is conservation and conservation in perpetuity.
What a great answer, man. This land really is made for you and me. What turns you off in this world, Chris?
False patriotism. False patriotism I suppose just patriotism full stop, in the sense that we don't really know what that means now, do we? I mean, just to harken back to the Capitol thing. I mean, can you run in with a Confederate flag in tandem with another gentleman with an American flag breaking and entering into a Capitol? I don't know. What about the gates of the Arctic National Park and Refuge in Alaska, one of the largest national parks, if not the largest, I think might be the second in the United States, and one of the largest refuges in the Arctic Circle. acre upon acre, hundreds of thousands of parcels of land were sold off during the Trump administration to oil and gas and mineral mining. So who does that benefit? That benefits 3 or 4 Americans up top. But what about the countless Americans and just every person on the face of the planet is allowed admission into our national park system? So that's false favoritism, thinking that you're going to have some crap trickle down theory that you're going to help somebody at top because they're going to make a couple medium jobs to completely ruin a land forever. And who are you appeasing there? So that was done on the auspices of we're making American jobs. We're making America great again. Makes America great again. So it's
just divides us more and ruins communities.
It does, certainly. So that would be my biggest turn off.
I love that answer. Number 5. What sound or noise do you love, Chris?
I love the sound of rain.
Oh yeah.
That's when I go to bed, I ask, I can't say the wake word, but Alexa, to play rain sounds. And that's always nice. And the last couple of nights, it's been very snowy, like rainy mix here. So I haven't been using that. And it's just nice to crack the window open and hear that.
That's what I do, the exact same thing, literally. I just have a Google Play though. What sound or noise do you hate?
I believe there's an actual name to a syndrome or something attached to this. I get very irrationally mad and upset in an array of negative emotions when I hear chewing or like crunching or something like that. Encourage listeners, I don't know the name here. I ought to, because it could really range. Where for me, it's just a frustration. It's just like, oh, it's like nails on a chalkboard, something that really annoys me. But for a lot of folks with different auditory issues and different intellectual disabilities could have issue with these noises. So for me, it's an annoyance, but for some other folks, it could be a real hindrance to their day in progress. But yeah, I'm lucky it's that. And I just can't stand it. I just can't, like, cereal, potato chips.
Straight up gross.
Stuff. It is.
Especially gulps after drinks. By the way,
no.
The word is misophenia.
There it is.
It was coined in 2001. So relatively new. What's your favorite curse word, Chris?
I don't know exactly if this is a curse word, but when I lived in the UK, I lived in Scotland for a year and a quarter, and the British just have so many different, they have a very colorful vernacular for cursing. And I like the term bollocks. It's actually the name of this, I believe, the Sex Pistols' second studio album, Nevermind the Bollocks.
Bollocks!
But yeah, see, it could be exclaimed and it could be said sadly, like, oh, bollocks. You know, it's, so I'm not sure if I think it's a curse word or maybe it's a curse word of long time ago, but nonetheless, it's fun to say.
That's bollocks. Man, I've definitely heard Monty Python say that.
Yes.
Or Michael Caine.
Benny Hill, all that good stuff.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I would love to be a chef. I would adore to go to culinary school one day and either that or open a cafe or a restaurant or something like that. It is an amazing array of ingredients and preparations and endless possibilities and a great form of expression as well. And to harken back to that's what I asked earlier about, like, what makes DC where some hangout spots and culinary spots. It's amazing to see somebody really homing in on their craft and presenting to you, and it's not just a bit of nourishment or food. It's an experience, and to have that as an elevated thing, and it's a great communicator as well amongst different peoples and cultures. So I'd love to do that.
That was what's amazing about Anthony Bourdain's show that shows that exact experience you were saying.
Love it.
Oh man.
Rest in peace. One of the greatest writers and true amazing.
Showing us this world, man. Rest in peace indeed. What profession other than your own would you not like to do?
Would I not like to do? Um, God. I mean, there's a lot. I'm just trying to, narrow it down a bit.
Of course.
I you know, I don't know, man. I do, but I don't. Um, Honestly, people who work, oh, here it is. Folks who work in um I'm thinking of DC Metro, New York City Metro,
Mhm.
any metropolitan area, and with any metro system rather, the cleaning up of the tracks, the cleaning up
Yeah.
of the stations. Even though a lot of folks they have a lot to say about, well, the subway system looks disgustingly dirty, they are cleaned quite frequently,
Oh
and
yeah, especially now.
to see people cleaning them and just all the guck and all that, and having to deal with, as well as, angry passengers because of delays, etc. No, no, a lot of rats, a lot of
Big ones too.
feces. Yeah.
Yeah. And my final question for you, Chris: if heaven exists, what would you like hear? What would you like to hear God say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
The Wi-Fi passwords on the remote, and Netflix, Hulu, HBO, all that good stuff is already logged in. You're free to go.
Now that does sound like heaven, man. Chris, I know we had a bit of a we just had a look at the time for this one, but I enjoyed this. There's so many more things I want to talk to you with, but I really hope you want to come back on again. I really enjoyed your appearance, and this is music to my ears. Thank you so much for coming on, Chris. You know I love you. You're just so much respect and admiration for you, Chris, and I can't wait to talk to you again. And I'm gonna text you more about Sopranos right when this is done because you're just the man.
Great. I love you, Matt, so much. I can't wait for part two, and can't wait for more Sopranos and Gabagool type content.
Definitely. And I'm taking you up on that offer about visiting you in DC once this pandemic's free.
Oh, 100%. 100%. All right,
Can't wait,
Matt.
my friend.
Always a pleasure. Take care.
You the man, Chris. Stay safe.